Hi, everyone. My name is Brandon Rodriguez, and I work in the Education Department at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And I am honored to be here with you guys today. Today is the day we've been waiting for. Finally, in just a few hours, the Perseverance rover will be landing on Mars. After several weeks of exciting student work, we're really happy to talk to you guys for this last large student session, joined by a JPL engineer, Joey Jefferson. And we're going to take the last of your questions as we prepare for entry, descent, and landing. Before we get into that, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the things that we've done up to this point. So if I could show you guys just a few slides to get us started. On the first, I hope you're familiar with this website by now. This is our Mission to Mars Student Challenge, and I believe that's what brought you guys here today. This included 5 weeks of student work broken down into each of the components that actual scientists and engineers at JPL go through when it comes to how we design, build, send, and arrive on Mars. If you can take a look at this website, you'll see that each week is broken down into a theme, and within that theme, you'll see grade level aligned activities so that students from all ages, whether you're at home, whether you're in the classroom, can participate. Now, obviously, as we actually prepare for landing in just a couple hours here, there's still plenty of time to participate. This website's going to be up, and even weeks after, as we get involved in surface operations, there's still so much for us to talk about, so much for us to explore. So please feel free to engage with this website, even if you haven't yet. On the second slide, you'll see my good buddy Lyle, who is definitely not wearing a wire, and he will kind of set the stage for each of these weekly challenges with a quick video kind of highlighting with the scientists and engineers at JPL what it takes to really engage in each of these components. So this is a really great way to really get started, even if you're kind of playing catch up. On slide 3, you'll see some of the work that we've collected over the last few weeks. And it's just been incredible for all of us here at NASA to see the student work as it comes in. So we can't thank you enough for sharing all of the ways that you have kind of followed along with us as we prepare for this moment. You can see here, students began by figuring out how one even gets to Mars. How do you plot that course, right? One doesn't simply just fire off into space. You have to kind of sit down and do the math and run the numbers first. After that, students launched their rockets, some of them able to kind of clear the building. So that's a pretty good start on your way to space. On the fourth slide, you'll see now that we've been able to actually launch our rockets, what do we do next? Well, we want to land safely. And you can see here students of all ages that have designed some really incredible rovers and some ability to touch down safely and maybe not so safely through their classroom studies. So on the final slide I'll show you here, again, I just want to remind you that this education website is up year-round. There are so many activities for you guys to play with, all grade level aligned, all aligned to national standards, and with all of these videos and, of course, the student showcase. So feel free to continue sending us all of your great work as you go through these activities. So I thought perhaps the best thing to do as we get ready for this moment is to kind of show you what entry and descent and landing is going to look like. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video. And as you can see, we are now preparing for the actual arrival of the spacecraft after hundreds of thousands of miles, millions of miles, and 7 months traveling through space. Our rover is encapsulated in between this back shell and this heat shield. As it moves through the atmosphere of Mars, that heat shield helps kind of push away all the friction and heat that generates, because Mars' atmosphere is thin, but not so thin that we can move through easily. Now, in order to slow down as best as possible, the next phase is to actually launch a parachute. So when this parachute is deployed, this helps us begin to slow down. But as mentioned, because the Martian atmosphere is so thin, this isn't enough to get us down to the surface safely. So instead, we use what's called the sky crane technique. And this is similar to what was used in the Curiosity rover. This means that the heat shield is dropped, and then we literally drop the rover from out of the back shell, which sounds like an absolutely ludicrous idea. But because of this sky crane, which acts as kind of like a jetpack for the rover, these little retro rockets allow the rover to slowly descend to the surface and bring its velocity a little closer to zero. At this point, the sky crane is looking out onto the terrain and trying to find the safest place for our rover to land, making sure it doesn't, hit any rocky areas or ledges. And when it finds a suitable position, the sky crane lowers the rover on these tethers, touching down safely, at which point it cuts the tethers and flies off into the distance. So with this, we've arrived safely on Mars. The Perseverance rover has touched down and is ready to begin surface operations. Here in Jezero Crater, where we're going to be looking for signs of ancient life. Pretty exciting stuff. So this is just a few hours away, and at this point, I think it would be great to turn over to our expert, Joey, and kind of ask some of the questions that you guys have remaining as we prepare for this moment. So Joey, if I could ask you, the very first question that is popping up so much in student questions is, obviously, why Mars? Of all of our solar system, why is Mars such an interesting destination for us?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm really happy to be here and to be with you all. And Mars is similar to Earth in a few ways, but different from Earth in ways that are manageable compared to other planets in the solar system. For example, Mars is only slightly more than half the size of the Earth, with a diameter of, the Earth has a diameter of 12,000 or so kilometers, and Mars has a diameter of just above 6,000 kilometers. Mars also has an atmosphere like Earth, but it's 100 times thinner, and the atmospheric makeup of Mars is mostly made of carbon dioxide instead of nitrogen and oxygen, which makes up Earth. And the temperature of Mars is also managed, which is an average of negative 81 degrees Fahrenheit, compared to an average temperature of 57 degrees Fahrenheit here on Earth. For contrast, the average temperature of Venus is about 820 degrees to nearly 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is hot enough to melt lead. And so Mars is uniquely suitable for exploration, and it's why we're so excited today to watch Mars 2020 land.
Yeah, it's funny to hear the word manageable really does kind of put this in context, right? Not exactly hospitable, but at least manageable.
Exactly.
Well, we have a few student submitted questions by video that I'd love to get to. And so if we could see the first one.
Hello, I'm a fourth grader, and my question is, what does a rover do once it gets to Mars?
Oh, wow. It's a really great question. So what does a rover do when it gets to Mars? You can think of rovers like robotic scientists with carefully made instruments on board to learn about its environment. This includes studying the rocks of Mars, which holds geologic records we can gather a ton of information from, as well as learning about the environments millions and billions of years ago through simply studying this rock record. A term that's coming around a lot when you learn about Mars 2020 are stromatolites, which are deposits of residue that were left by microbes in the past. And we have some of that here on Earth, which were deposited about 3.7 billion years ago, which coincides exactly with a major climate change on Mars that happened around 3.8 billion years ago. And so we're looking for evidence of our minerals that can only have been created by life. And microbes are also very diverse. There are some microbes that can literally eat metal. Some microbes that have been proven to survive in unimaginable conditions like space or in a vacuum, extreme temperatures, and more. And there are many talented planetary geologists, astrobiologists, and other fields of science really interested and are especially interested in Mars 2020 because it's going to Jezero Crater, as Brandon has already mentioned, which is next to a delta where we think rivers flowed into an ancient lake. And so Mars 2020 is equipped with lasers and zoom cameras, which can resolve images at incredible distances, a coring drill with a variety of bits to drill samples and more. And hopefully we will collect these samples in the future launch them to an ESA spacecraft, and bring them back to Earth. So there's a lot to do for Mars 2020 when it gets to Mars, and we're all really excited to see it happen.
Yeah, awesome. I know we have a lot of questions on that. We'll definitely speak a little bit more about some of these specifics. Could we see the second student submitted question as well?
Hi, my name is Mariah, and I'm in the 3rd grade. My question for NASA is, how do you come up with the names to name the robot?
Oh, great. So how do you come up with names for the rover? I wish I could tell you that there's a secret room full of really smart people that come up with it, but actually, Mars rovers are named in contests by students just like you. And I think that's actually more exciting. For Mars 2020, a 7th grader named Alex Mather from Springfield, Virginia, submitted his winning essay, which was selected by NASA from a field of over 28,000 entries from K through 12 students in every state in the United States. Curiosity got its rover from a student named Clara Ma, who at the time was a 6th grader when she entered her essay, but now has graduated with a degree in geophysics from Yale University. So I definitely recommend sending in essays for when we send another rover or the next mission to Mars, and when this opportunity presents itself again, because it's really exciting if you do get chosen.
That's a heck of a feather in a cap. Imagine students put that on your college applications for sure.
Exactly.
And we actually have one more video question that I was really excited about, if we could see that one.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Kenny Wynn. I am a student here at Westchester Academy for International Studies. And my big question is, if or once you find any signs of former life on Mars, what are you hoping to be your next big discovery?
Okay, so if we find signs of life on Mars, what will NASA do next? And what are you hoping will be the next big discovery? So that is an excellent, excellent question. It reminds me of a talk between Dr. Penny Boston, who was the previous director of NASA's Astrobiology Institute, and Dr. Jim Green, who is NASA's chief scientist. And they talked about exactly this scenario. First, NASA would invite scientists all over the world to review the data, and when announcing the discovery, they'll allow scientists who are skeptical to give their assessment as well. Then education will be sent out to the public explaining the type of life found, which we think will be microbial if found, as explained a little bit before, or the size of bacteria or viruses, which are much smaller. And then we would want to return a sample as soon as possible so scientists can use their powerful instruments here on Earth to study the samples extremely carefully and with the power of Earth instruments. That would be done usually in a bio level 4 facility, which is where we study anthrax and other really important microbes that can cause a lot of damage or we don't know much about. And then the next big discoveries, I believe, will be the features and the properties of that life. So what does it use for energy? What's its genetic makeup? Or is it even made of the same genetic material that we are made out of? And so many more questions that I know a ton of really smart scientists and people that have spent their entire life learning about this field would love to get their hand at trying to answer. And so it's really exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost beyond imagination, right? I mean, to
Really?
think about how earth-shattering that kind of discovery would be. And I think it's really important that students understand that when we talk about finding life on another planet, just like you mentioned, this is how excited we are at the prospect of even finding microbes. This is not Hollywood. We're not talking about little green men. Even just the presence of signs of ancient life in itself would be the greatest discovery in all of science to date.
Yeah, in that same talk between Dr. Penny Boston and Dr. Jim Green, they talked about what happened when Copernicus found out that the Earth orbits the sun and not everything orbiting around the Earth, right? So we found out at that time that the Earth was not the center of the universe, and every single human being over time got that information and had to readjust how they saw themselves in the universe. And I feel the same exact situation will happen if we do end up finding evidence of life in the past or current life today.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we're have the potential to live in a complete changing paradigm.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to take some of the questions online that we have as well. A couple of them relate actually to what's going on right now as we kind of prepare
Mhm.
for this EDL experience. The first one that I thought is important is what's been going on for the last 7 months, right? I mean,
Mhm.
surely it's not a point and shoot situation. Do you have to make any adjustments? Are there any kind of complications during cruise to Mars that you guys have to worry about?
Yeah, so during cruise, the main actions that are done by the spacecraft team are what's called checkouts, where they check out each of the instruments, they make sure the rover's healthy, they make sure everything is doing as planned while it's on the journey to Mars. And once it gets closer to EDL, it goes into what's called EDL approach mode, which all of the instruments and incredible software that's been developed for this mission, and for instance, the TRN, so terrain relative navigation software, which is going to help the spacecraft know where to go when it's during the crucial part of EDL. All of that is tested and made sure to working, ensured to be working, and all working correctly right when we get to EDL. And so it's important time because they take the checkouts very seriously. And we want to make sure without a shadow of a doubt that everything is working as planned during these crucial moments.
Yeah, that actually leads to another really great question I noticed, which was, how do you know you're ready? And it's kind of funny is I've never actually thought about that. So what does the process look like, whether it's building the rover or instrument design or actually preparing for EDL? What's the final box to check where you say, yeah, we're good to go?
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of scientists and engineers would say, we never know if we're ready. we test and test and test and test and try to make sure with the highest amount of certainty that it will work as planned. And sometimes this landing on Mars is extremely difficult, and sometimes it does not go as planned. But we hope we've done enough testing, we've spent enough time and enough effort to ensure a safe landing at Mars.
From the testing side, I know that we spoke yesterday a lot about coding, and a lot of students now are getting into computer science at a younger and younger age. Could you tell us a little bit about what does that development look like? Well, what languages do we code in,
Mhm.
and what does that process look like to make sure that this code is good, since we're going to be running autonomously for all of
Yeah.
EDL?
Yeah, so I can attest personally to the power of having a computer science background as you enter into college and as you enter, if you do want to go in this route of engineering or science. Um, Languages like Python are very powerful, and I recommend going to resources like codeacademy.com where you can learn the language for free and just getting an idea of how coding works. And then secondly, as far as testing the software, so developers write the software and then it's tested thoroughly through to make sure there's no what's called bugs in the software that can cause any unintended responses from that software. And that is a really long, very structured process that takes a lot of time just to make sure, again, without a shadow of a doubt, that this code will work when it is needed during EDL.
Yeah, I try to tell students that learning how to code, even just a little bit, is just such a valuable skill now. The days of that when we were school, writing cursive are clearly long gone. Um,
Exactly.
but even though I have a chemistry background, um, I tried to learn to code just a little bit to be able to communicate with other disciplines a little bit better, right? It's kind of like learning the language when you go visit another country. You know maybe just enough to get by, but it helps you kind
Yeah.
of communicate. So really, everybody should learn how to code at least a little.
And I'd also add that coding is powerful, right? It's a lot better to write a script to be able to multiply things for you versus to have to do it on a calculator every single, or do it by hand, God forbid, every single time you want to do a calculation. And so coding takes things that would take a lot of time and can instantly put it in a lot of, in a short amount of time, a lot of powerful work to get done. And so it's across every discipline, really. You'll find coding start to kind of seep up for that reason. And that's why we stress it so much as something that you can learn, and there are resources you can learn for free. And so I highly, highly, highly recommend you do that.
Yeah, awesome. Maybe switching gears a little bit, as we kind of talk about how times and skills have changed, can you comment a little bit about what upgrades can we expect on Perseverance versus Curiosity? How is this one different?
Yeah, so Perseverance has a ton of upgrades on it. First, the autonomy. So autonomy just means doing things without human help or human intervention. The robot is doing it all by itself. And it has increased autonomy to get to points we can command it to. So there's a anecdote that I've heard where you command it to the end of the day, and the rover is going to figure out how to do it by itself, right? In previous examples or previous rover and commanding sequences that we sent to the rover, that wasn't the case, and there wasn't as much autonomy there for that rover. And so that's something that's really exciting to see. So this includes how it schedules the activities that the spacecraft or the rover is going to do over the day, collision avoidance autonomy, any hazards that may destroy the rover that we may not have seen, that the rover can detect with its sophisticated instruments, and use its software to figure out how to get away from that hazard, and a bunch of different other things that are actually tested here at JPL at the Mars Yard with equally capable rover called Optimism, where they test everything before they send it out to the rover to try to figure out by itself. And then we spoke about before terrain relative navigation, which takes images in real time and creates a map based off what it's seeing, and can move the spacecraft during EDL autonomously to more safer landing sites. And it uses comparisons to very detailed maps already on board the spacecraft to make decisions incredibly fast through these algorithms created by software engineers here at JPL. And then, of course, the actual instruments that are different from Curiosity here to Perseverance, like the rock coring mechanism, which is going to allow the rover to cache samples, our cores, which are rock cores, which are samples of Martian soil and Martian surface, and send it back to Earth through a mission called the Mars Sample Return. And so there's a lot of exciting parts of this rover. Oh, almost forgot one more really important one, as Ingenuity, which is a tech demo, which will prove powered flight is capable on another planet, which just blows my mind. And so it's basically like a drone, which you can think of future uses of this technology as ways to check hazardous areas without placing an expensive rover there or human life in danger. It can take pictures at higher elevations, but still closer to the surface, versus orbiters that are orbiting Mars right now, and to plan missions or for any other uses you can think of, and other things. And so there's a lot on this rover that is new, and that we're really excited to see work.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like everything on board is something to be really, really excited about.
Yeah, really.
You mentioned, Ingenuity. You mentioned the Mars Yard, which kind of aligns to a question that's submitted, which is, how do we go about testing? Like, if, obviously the Mars Yard it's a popular destination for anyone who visits JPL, but how do we kind of compensate for things like the difference in gravity or the difference in atmosphere when we're doing these types of tests?
Yeah, and so engineers are very creative, and that is one thing I like to say to take from your childhood is creativity and your imagination. And so, for example, to deal with the thinness of Mars's atmosphere, engineers tested the parachute at higher elevations where the atmosphere is a lot thinner at Earth. to try to replicate the same thinness of Mars's atmosphere to test the parachute for EDL, for example. Other ways of testing the terrain relative navigation software, for example, was done by putting it on a helicopter and on a rocket here at Earth to try to simulate things that it may see and calculate how fast it's making changes, and a bunch of different ways. And so it really comes down to creativity and thinking of ways to replicate environments that the rover is going to see, or the spacecraft will see during EDL.
I mean, careers in science, right? Like the breadth of
Yeah.
of things that are tested and the opportunities. I mean, it's just, it's amazing to imagine that at some point you could be driving a robotic car across a simulated Martian terrain, right?
Yeah.
So last question before we're out of time, the absolutely important one for all the events today. When can we kind of expect the rover to be up and running? How long does it take to kind of once it's landed, deploy the mast, get ready, power up, and get going?
Yeah, so right when it lands, hopefully within a few minutes, we'll get images from the surface of Mars at Jezero Crater, and you'll see a lot of happy people at JPL in the darkroom, or in the mission control, mission support area at JPL, and they'll be jumping and laughing and crying and dancing, as they should be, because it took a lot of work across so many different communities and international communities to make this happen. And so after that, there'll be a phase called SOX, which is cruise to surface transition, or surface operations transition, where they'll be doing checkouts on the surface of Mars, making sure all the instruments and the rover is healthy and that nothing was damaged during landing. And then after the SOX phase is over, they'll start doing the rover operations, and it should be really fun to see all that start happening.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for joining us as we kick off the programming for today. And obviously, thank you to everyone watching. I mean, really it's been such a blessing to be part of your journey as you competed in the Mission to Mars Student Challenge. I hope you'll continue. And of course, tune in at 11:15 Pacific time as this programming continues. And we'll expect some great landing news around just after noon Pacific time. So thanks so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being part of this incredible scientific process, and looking forward to seeing you guys later today. Thanks so much.